Welcome to Live Daf, your online Daf Yomi shir.
Hi and welcome to today's Daf Yomi, Niddah Daf Ayin Aleph. We're 8 lines from the top. Beis Shammai Oimrim. Says the Gemara, Mai Taimayu de Beis Shammai. What is the reason of the Shita of Beis Shammai? Now we had a machlekes in the Mishnah between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Beis Shammai holds, Kol Hanashim Meisais Nidais. Every Isha who dies is considered to be a Niddah prior to her Misa. And anything that she may have come into contact with at that point needs to be toivled. Beis Hillel say, no, Ein Niddah El Shameisa Niddah. Unless you know for certain that she was actually a Niddah, we don't apply the Tumas Niddah to every Isha prior to her Misa. What is the basis, what is the reasoning behind the machlekes? Says the Gemara, Mai Taimayu de Beis Shammai. What is the reason of Beis Shammai's Shita? It seems like a tremendous chiddush to consider every Isha to be a Niddah prior to her Misa. Says the Gemara, if you propose to say, Mishum Dechsiv, because it says in Megillas Esther, this was when Esther Amalka received the terrible news, the message from Mordechai regarding Haman's Gzeir to annihilate the Yidden. It says in the pasuk, Vateschalchal Hamalka, that the queen became very afraid. Va'amarav, what's the point of this pasuk? Malamed is coming to teach us Shepir Sanida, that the fear generated a Re'iyas Dam. She became a Niddah. Hachanami. So too in our case of an Isha who is dying. Agav b'yesusa de malacha de moisa. Because of the pachad, the fright that she is being exposed to the malach hamavis, chazia, it will cause her to see dam. So the reason that Beis Shammai considers every Isha prior to her Misa as a Niddah, it is due to the fright of being exposed to the angel of death, to the malach hamavis, which that precipitates re'iyas dam. Ask the Gemara, if that's the case, that you're assuming that pachad, fright, can actually bring about dam, this seems to contradict something we have learned in the Mishnah. We've learned in the Mishnah just the opposite. Shecharoda, terror, fear, misalekes es adam, it actually withholds, it removes dam niddah. The Mishnah is referring to the halacha that an Isha who has a vest kavua, she has a fixed time period to see her dam. We require her to make a bedika, examination on that day, to ascertain that there is no dam. If she does not do her bedika, she is still tameh. Even though we did not find any dam, we assume that the dam must have come on its fixed time. Now, there's an exception to that halacha, and that is if an Isha is hiding, she's in hiding, afraid to be attacked by a goyim, by a charka, by a militia. At that point, she is dwelling in fear, and the fear, the terror, actually inhibits the re'iyas dam. In that case, even if she neglected to do a bedika, she is still considered to be tuhar, and the reason is shecharoda misalekes es adamim. So here we see clearly that fear and terror has the opposite effect. Not only doesn't precipitate, not only doesn't it cause havas dam, it actually prevents and withholds damim from coming. So how can you propose that is the reason for Beis Shammai regarding every Isha as a Niddah due to the fright from being exposed to a malach hamavis? Halei kasha, says the Gemara, this won't be a kasha. There's a difference. We can make a distinction between different types of fear. If it's a sudden fear, that will actually bring about dam. If it's a gradual and ongoing fear, that actually has an opposite effect. Like kasha. Pachta, an ongoing fear, tzumbis, it actually has a contracting effect. It prevents the dam from exiting. Bia susa, on the other hand, a sudden fright, mirafia, it loosens the womb and will actually be gerim, cause her to see dam. So that will be the difference between the two cases. In the Mishnah we're speaking about charoda, an ongoing fear. She's hiding out and she's dwelling in terror and fear because of the charkim, because of the goyim that are attacking. In that case, the ongoing constant fear actually acts as an inhibitor and prevents the dam from arriving. However, in the case of Esther Amalka, being that it was a sudden fright, therefore, Vateschalchal Hamalka, she became a Niddah. So too in our case, with a Isha prior to her death, there's a sudden exposure to a malach hamavis, which brings a tremendous fear and fright, and therefore we're concerned that she had actually seen dam and she's considered to be a nida. Says the Gemara, if that is the reason for Beis Shammai's halacha, how would it fit with the next Mishnah? Elahadisnan, we've learned in the Mishnah, Beis Shammai oimrim kol ha'anoshim meisim zavim. Just as Beis Shammai regards every isha to be a nida prior to her misa, similarly, Beis Shammai says that every anoshim, all men, are considered to be zavin prior to their misa. Beis Hillel oimrim in zav elo misha mei zav. No, only if he is certainly a zav. In that case, he is tamei. We don't just propose and assume that he is a zav. So, in the case of a man, we wouldn't be able to apply the reasoning that we apply to a woman. Why is that so? Because an isha is matame when she sees dam, even if it's caused by an outside cause, by an oinus, even if it's not self-generated. However, regarding the ziva of an ish, there's a halacha which says, mipsarei v'loi machmas oinus. You can't have ziva when the cause of the ziva was an external geir, was caused by something externally. Says the Gemara, Ikri kan will apply over here the halacha of mipsarai v'loi machmas einsai. He will not become tummy since it wasn't mipsari, it wasn't self-generated. It was machmas einsai, it was brought about by some outside factor. So you can't then propose that the reason, the tam, that Beis Shammai are metame every ish prior to his misa, considers him a zav due to his exposure to the malach hamavis, that wouldn't be a reason to be metame him. That would be considered machmas einsai. So it's inconsistent. You can't give a reason for the tumas anoshim if it doesn't apply to the tumas anoshim as well. So then you must propose a nupshat. Ella, it must be time with the Beis Shammai, the reason that Beis Shammai regards them as tmeim, kedesane, like we learned in a brayse. Barishoina, at first, hayumat bilin kelim al gabe didois mesos. They would only be matbil, they would only be tovel, something that came into contact with a niddah who died. Vayu niddois chayis mizbaishois. That caused the living niddois to be embarrassed. It caused them shame. They would say, well, look, even after death, we are treated differently than everybody else. So it brought them shame and embarrassment that the niddois were singled out, that the kelim that they have come into contact with koydem misasan prior to the death would be treated betuma and needed to be toveled. Therefore, his skinu, the Chachamim instituted a sakana all across the board. Sheyumat bilin al gabi kol anoshim. From now on, we're going to be tovel all kelim that were touched by every isha prior to her death, whether or not she was a nida. Mipnei kvoidan shal nidais chayas, for the sake of preserving the honor and the kavod of the living nidais. Similarly, regarding men, Berishayna, at first hayumat bilan al gabi zav and mesim. Anything that came into contact with a zav prior to his misa required tefillah. For he was zavan chayim mizbaishin, the living zavan would be embarrassed, they would be shamed. Hiskinu, they instituted hayumat bilan al gabi kol ha'anoshim. They would be matvel all kelim that came into contact with any man prior to his misa. Why did they do that? V'pnei kvoidan shal zavin chayim, in order to preserve the honor and the kavod, and not to shame the living zavim. So in conclusion, we have a chiddush from Beis Shammai that anything that came into contact with an ish or an isha prior to misa, they are considered to be tamei and need tefillah. What is the reason for this halacha? Initially, the Gemara said it's because the fright of the malach hamaves causes her to be a nida, koydem misasa. It is different than just an ongoing, constant fear, which actually is mesalik the damim, which contracts the womb and doesn't allow dam. A sudden fear, a sudden fright, loosens the womb and brings about dam. Similar to what we know by Esther, that she was suddenly frightened because of the bad news that she received from Mordechai, she became a nida. So that was the initial suggestion of the Gemara. The Gemara proved that may not be the reason for Beis Shammai's chiddush, because that wouldn't apply to men. On account, in the case of a zav, he would not be tamei if the ziva was caused through an external factor. In that case, the Gemara concluded there must be a takana for the sake of preserving the kavod of the living nidais and the living zavim, and to show that we don't discriminate between Zavim and ordinary people, la'achar misasam. Continues the Mishnah. Ha'isha shemesa, v'yatsa mimena revi'is dam. If an isha died and outflowed a revi'is halog, a revi'is of dam. Now we know that a revi'is of dam that comes from a mace is metame b'maga, b'masa, and b'oil as well, provided that it has a shiur of a revi'is. Says the Mishnah that an isha who was mesa and out came a revi'is of dam, metama mishum kesem, the dam is tameh as if it would be dam niddah, or metama b'oil, meaning that in addition to being metame b'oil, similar to an ordinary dam min hameis, if there's a revi'is, the dam is metame b'maga, b'masa, and b'oil, the Tanna Kama holds, in addition to that, to be considered as ordinary dam mace, it is also considered as dam niddah. It is metame mishum kesem. We consider this dam to be dam niddah, and it is metame even b'mashu, b'maga or b'masa, even b'mashu. If one touches it or carries it, even a mashu, a drop of this dam, it has a status, it is classified as dam niddah, in addition to its status as dam min hameis, which is metame b'oil, provided there's a revi'is. So according to the Tanna Kama, this dam carries with it two separate classifications. It is classified as dam niddah, and is metame b'maga or b'masa, even if it's only a teeny drop of mashu. This is in addition to be considered dam min hameis, which is metame b'oil as well, provided that it has a revi'is. That is the shita of Tanna Kama. Rabbi Yehuda Omer eina metame mishum kesem. You can't say that this dam which flowed out la'achar misasa is classified as dam niddah. It cannot be metame mishum kesem. Mipnei sheneka mishum mesa. It got dislodged only la'achar misa. It is simply dam haba min hameis. It doesn't have the stringency of a kesem of dam min hachai. The Gemara will explain the reasoning of the Tanna Kama. Continues the Mishnah. Umayde Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda will admit in the following case that the dam does contain with it both classifications. What is the case? B'yesheves al mashber. If she is giving birth, umeisa, and she died, v'yatsa men revi'is dam, and then we found the revi'is of dam, she matama mishum kesem. In that case, Rabbi Yehuda will agree to Tanna Kama that this dam has a din of dam niddah. This is in addition to dam mace. It has both classifications. As we see in the next line of the Mishnah, that Rabbi Yosi responds to Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yosi, how could you say that this dam has a din of dam niddah and as well as a dam min hameis? No, since it was dislodged, mechaim, it was dislodged when she was still alive, while she was giving birth. Rabbi Yosi disagrees. Rabbi Yosi says, no, there's no tumas oil applied to this dam. This dam is merely considered as dam niddah min achai, and only carries with it the halachas of dam niddah, and not of dam min hameis, and will not be metame b'oil. So we have two separate machlokes in the Mishnah. One is regarding an isha shemesa, v'yatsa men revi'is dam. According to the Tanna Kama, this dam has both classifications. It is considered to be dam niddah, and is metame b'mashu. This is in addition to be considered dam min hameis, which is metame b'revi'is. Rabbi Yehuda disagrees. Rabbi Yehuda says this dam was min hameis. It came out la'achar misa. It is simply a dam min hameis and is only metame b'revi'is. We have another machlokes in the case where Isha al hamashber, she was in labor, and yatsa men revi'as dam. According to Rabbi Yosi, it is considered to be dam min hanida and is metame b'mashu. According to Rabbi Yehuda, in addition to being metame, because of dam min hanida, it is also considered to be dam min hameis and is metame b'oil. Let's move on to the Gemara. Michlal the Tanna Kama Savar, it would seem from the ratio of the Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda disagrees with the Tanna Kama. He says, no. How could you consider this to be dam min hachai? Dam that came out la'achar misa is strictly dam min hameis. That implies that the Tanna Kama shita is that indeed it is considered to be, in addition to the dam min hameis, we also consider it, we give it the din of dam min hachai. Mechlal the Tanna Kama Savar, afagav the nerkar dam mishameis, even though the dam was nerkar, was dislodged after misa, metama misham kesem. How could you say that this is dam niddah. There's no re'iyas dam la'achar misa. Isha can't become a niddah after death. Amar Ze'iri, the reason for the Tanakama is as follows. It's true, she has no re'iyah, she can't see dam. There's no re'iyas dam, there's no dinei re'iyas niddah la'achar misa. So why then does the dam have a status of dam niddah? Mekoir mekoimoi tomei ikebenayu. The reason for the machlokes between Tanakama and Rav Yehuda is, Tanakama holds that makar, the womb, the uterus of the isha, mekoimoi, the place itself is tamei. Any dam that's found in that place is tamei, regardless of whether the isha saw the dam, meaning that it flowed out when she was eligible to be a niddah or not. It doesn't matter, it's irrelevant. Any dam that's found in the makar has a status of dam nidus. So in our case as well, even though the dam was discovered only la'achar misa, in addition to be considered dam min hameis, dam which is emanating from a mace, in addition to that, it also has the halacha of dam niddah, and the reason for that is because it was found, it was coming from the makar, and since it was in the makar, it has a din of dam niddah and is metame b'mashu. Now this is a very interesting halacha, and Tosfos back on Daf Tazayin explains that this is not a simple halacha, this is not something which we can rationalize, it's halacha Moshe Sinai, because interestingly enough, we find a Gemara which says that in some cases, in a case where the dam flowed out derech doifen, not via the ordinary route, there's a shita that holds that the dam itself is tamei since it originated in the makar, but in that case the isha herself won't be tamei. It won't be considered as a re'iyas dam niddah. So it's quite perplexing. It's dam niddah, but the isha remains to her. So Tosfos concludes it must be that this is a special designated halacha l'Moshe Sinai, that the dam, since it was in the makar, it has a special status of dam niddah, although the isha may not herself have become tar on account of this dam. So again, this is the reasoning for the machlokes of the Tanakama Rav Yehuda. Dam which flowed out la'achar misa, which came from the makar, according to that Tanakama, in addition to being considered dam min hameis, which is metame ba'oil if it has a revius. In addition to that, it also has a stringency of being considered dam niddah, which is metame b'maga b'masa, even if it's only a tiny little bit. Rav Yehuda evidently disagrees with this halacha, and he does not give it the status of dam niddah, only strictly dam min hameis, which is metame b'revius. Continues the Gemara. In the Seif of the Mishnah, we discussed the case where Isha was yesheves al mashber, was in labor, and dam was yotzei. What is the status? What is the halacha of this dam? Rav Yehuda maintains that the dam carries with it both halachas. It is dam min hachai and as well as dam min hameis. According to Rabbi Yossi, no. Since the dam was nekar mechayim, it was dislodged prior to misa. The dam only has a din of dam min hachai and metame mishum niddah, but not dam min hameis, and will not be metame with metame mishum oil. Continues the Gemara. Umay de Rabbi Yehuda mechlal the Tanakama savar. There's a gersa that says mechlal de Rabbi Yehuda savar, meaning from the words of Rabbi Yossi, from the fact that Rabbi Yossi counters Rabbi Yehuda, and he says, "Lefichach eino metame b'oil." In your case, it cannot carry with it, it cannot contain a tumas oil, since it was nekar mechayim. That would imply that Rabbi Yehuda holds that it also has tumas oil. It also has tumas meis. Mechlal de Rabbi Yehuda savar b'oil nami metame. This dam, although it was nekar mechayim, is considered to be dam min hameis. How could that be? Isn't that unexplainable? How could you explain such a thing? Amar Rav Yehuda dam tvusa ikabenayu. We're not discussing tumas dam min hameis, the oiraisa de ketuma. We're not discussing the tuma min haTorah. There's a new tuma called dam tvusa, which is a tuma on a dam midrabanan. Even though the dam has not come out of a mace, we'll discuss it soon in the Bryce exactly what is the exact definition of dam tvusa. But it doesn't necessarily have to be dam or full revius that came from a mace. There is a tumah midrabanan, even if part of the dam came out mechayim, if part of the revius flowed from the chay. Therefore, that is the pshat in Rabbi Yehuda. Why is Rabbi Yehuda giving this dam, which began to flow out mechayim, why is he giving it a status of dam misa? Is metame ba'oil? It is not midaraisa. It is not a tumah, an ordinary tumas dam min hameis min haTorah. It is a special tumah midrabanan called dam tevusa. And Rabbi Yossi disagrees with that. Rabbi Yossi says dam tevusa is only when we're uncertain, when there's a suffix of whether the dam flowed out mechaim or flowed out la'achar misa. In this case of Yesheves al HaMashpeh, we see that the dam was nekar mechaim, it was dislodged mechaim. Certainly in this case, the halacha of dam tevusa will not be applied. Rav Yehuda on the other hand holds, perhaps some of the dam came la'achar misa, and therefore it is tamei because of the din of dam tevusa. So that is the basis of the machlekes between Rav Yehuda and Rav Yossi and the seifa of the Mishnah. Let's go on to explain what exactly is dam tevusa. Again, Amar Rav Yehuda, dam tevusa ika benayu. The machlekes is regarding whether we should apply the halacha, the status, the classification of dam tevusa in this scenario. What is dam tevusa? The Sani we've learned, Eizo dam tevusa. Pirish, Rabbi Lezer, Rabbi Yehuda. In the following example, Harug, a person who was killed, Shiyatsu menu dam. Dam came out, Bein b'chayav, Bein b'maisai. And the Gemara explains, Safek b'chayav yatsa. We're uncertain, perhaps the whole revius, the complete shiur, came out mechaim. In that case, it's tar. Safek b'maisai yatsa. We have another possibility, perhaps it all came out la'achar misa and it's matame. We have another option, Safek b'chayiv u'b'maisai. Maybe part came out mechaim while it's still alive, and part came out after death. Zehu dam tevusa. This is what Chachamim meant when they said that dam tevusa is tamei, since it was partially mechaim, partially la'achar misa, or perhaps completely mechaim, or perhaps completely la'achar misa. We have many options and many possibilities. Therefore, the Chachamim applied a din tumah as if it was dam that came out from the mace. That is the shita of Rabbi Lezer, Rabbi Yehuda. The Chachamim, that is not the case. In this case, the Chachamim did not give it a din of dam tevusa. Why is that? Since there is a suffix here, perhaps the whole shiur came out la'achar misa, and in that case it will be tamei min haTorah. We have a suffix, we have an uncertainty regarding a tumah v'daraisa. There's a tzad, there's an option, there is a possibility that this dam is actually tamei min haTorah. B'rshus hayachad tzveika tamei. In this case, b'rshus hayachad, if this suffix, if this uncertainty took place in rshus hayachad, in a private domain, it would be tamei min haTorah. Since there is a bona fide suffix here, we have a tzad that perhaps this revius dam completely came out la'achar misa and would be tamei as an ordinary dam in hames. So in that case, we apply the halacha of safek tumah b'rshus hayachad, sfeika tamei. It would be tamei min haTorah. It wouldn't be necessary to be machadish, to enact a new law called dam tevusa. B'rshus hayachad sfeika tamei, b'rshus harabim sfeika tar. If this would happen in a public domain of b'rshus harabim, it would be tar. So this can't be what the Chachamim meant when they described dam tevusa. It must be ezo dam tevusa. What is the exact definition of dam tevusa? For instance, somebody who was killed and a revius dam came out. Partially came out b'chayev and partially la'achar misa. V'adayin lo pasak, and it hasn't yet ceased. Safek ruvay b'chayev. We have a suffix, we're uncertain. Perhaps most of the revius came out mechaim, umiyuta b'maisai, and only a small part after death. Safek miyuta b'chayav, v'ruba b'maisai. Perhaps the opposite. Perhaps most of it came out la'achar misa, and only a small part mechaim. Zeu dam tevusa. This indeed is considered to be dam tevusa. Meaning, in this case, where we know for sure that part came out mechaim and part la'achar misa, it certainly wasn't kuloi la'achar misa. It for sure didn't have a tzad. There was no possibility that the complete revius came after death. It was partially mechaim, partially la'achar misa. We're just unsure of the proportions. Perhaps roiv, majority, the most of it came out while you're still alive, or perhaps roiv came out la'achar misa. So in this case, there is no real suffix tumah min haTorah, since we don't even have a possibility that the complete shir revius is tamei min haTorah, because we have no possibility that the revius came out la'achar misa. in its entirety. It certainly was partially Mechaim and partially La'achar Misa. So in this case, we require a takana exer d'Rabbanan to be metamei this dam on account of the halacha of dam tevusa. So in summary, there is a machlekes in the Brisa. What is considered dam tevusa? Is it dam which we are mesupok, we are uncertain of whether it completely came out mechaim or completely la'achar misa? That's the shita of Reb Lezer, Reb Yehuda. We're not sure when it came out, kulei mechaim, kulei la'achar misa, or maybe partially mechaim, partially la'achar misa. The Chachamim disagree and they hold that dam tevusa is strictly in a case where we know that certainly partially it was mechaim and partially la'achar misa. We're just unsure of the proportions. Having said that, the Brisa will mention two more halachas which are relating to the halacha of dam tevusa. One is Rabbi Yehuda Aimer, Harak sheyatsa men arvias dam. If a person was killed and arvias dam came out, vayimutu umita, he was lying on a bed. V'damai metaftef leguma, and the dam was dripping into a pit. Drip, drip. V'pnei tamei. This dam is considered to be tamei, is considered to be dam tevusa. Now this is a chiddush, meaning although the initial dam that's in the pit is tar, it's a dam that flowed mechaim, and it carries no tumah whatsoever. Then the dam from the la'achar misa, which flows in, which drips in, there would be room to think that it becomes nullified, it becomes batal in the tar dam that's already there. Says Rabbi Yehuda, no, that is not so. It is still tamei. Why? Because the blood that's dripping out la'achar misa is mixed in there, and therefore it is metamei and is considered to be dam tevusa. Chachamim say no. In this case, that the dam la'achar misa is dripping into the dam tar, it's tar. Why? Because the drops are discontinuous. Each one is a separate drop, and is not mitzaref, does not combine with the previous one. If so, every drop as it falls into the pit, which contains dam tahara, will become batal in the dam tahara. Ask the Gemara, Shapir, ka'amri lei Rabban Rab Yehuda. It seems to be a pretty strong argument that the dam tamei is batal. So why does Rabbi Yehuda say that it's tamei? Answers the Gemara, Rabbi Yehuda l'tamei. This is the famous sheet of Rabbi Yehuda. The Omar ein dam vatal dam. One dam cannot nullify, cannot be mevatel the other dam. Taisus explains, Rabbi Yehuda is following his shita, his opinion that min b'minoi leibatel. When you have two items that are the same kind, there is no halacha of bittul in that case. So too, when one dam drops into the other, there is no halacha of bittul. One more halacha in the Brisa regarding dam tevusa. Reb Shimon Omer, tzoluv al eitz, a person who is hanged on a tree, shedamai shoyses la'aretz, his blood is flowing down to the earth. V'nimtza tachta revi'as dam tamei. When you find the revi'as dam underneath, on the floor, it is tamei. Why? Because of dam tevusa. Because that dam partially contains some of the dam misa as well. Rabbi Yehuda matar. Rabbi Yehuda says in this case, it's tar. Why? She'ani hoimer, I have room to suspect, tipa shel misa oimedes le'al gava eitz. The dam that emerged la'achar misa is still up on the tree. It got stuck on the eitz, on the wood, and therefore never made it down. And therefore, since there is room to suspect that there is no dam misa in the pile of dam at the bottom, therefore Chachamim did not apply the halacha of dam tevusa in this case. Ask the Gemara, if Rabbi Yehuda suspects that the dam shla'achar misa remains up on top, what about the case of the mita? Rabbi Yehuda himself stated before that a harag that's on a mita and is dripping dam, the dam is tamei. Why don't we suspect that perhaps the dam that came after death is still up on the bed? If Rabbi Yehuda neima iul nafshe, Rabbi Yehuda should say to himself, Shani yoimer, perhaps tipa shel misa medes le'al gava mita. The dam that came after misa remained on the bed. What is the difference between the two cases? Answers the Gemara, Shani v'mita. The case of the mita is different than machalchala. It's porous. It has holes, and therefore the dam flows through, and there's no reason to suspect that the dam remained on the mita. So in conclusion, we had a Mishnah with two separate halachas. The first halach in the Mishnah was regarding an Isha who was Mesa, and a revius dam emerged, according to the Tanakama, in addition to being classified as dam min hames, which is mitame be'oyel b'revius, if it has a sheer revius. In addition to that, it also has the classification of dam kesem, of dam niddah, which is mitame b'mashu, b'maga u'b'masa. That is the shita of Tanakama. The Gemara explained that the Tanakama holds since it was originated in the makar, that gives it a tumas dam niddah, and it has the halacha of ordinary dam niddah in addition to dam min hames. Rabbi Yehuda disagrees. Rabbi Yehuda holds it is strictly dam min hames. It is only tame if it has a sheer revius. Rabbi Yehuda evidently does not hold of the halacha of makar makami tami. The second halacha mentioned in the Mishnah was a case of an isha who was in labor, and there was a revius dam that was nekar, began coming out mechaim, and Rabbi Yehuda says it is tami on two accounts. It is considered to be dam kesem, it is considered to be dam min niddah, and is metame b'mashu. In addition to that, it also has the halacha of dam min hames, and is metame be'oyel if it has a revius. The Gemara explained this is not a din d'oraisa. The fact that Rabbi Yehuda is metame as if it would be dam and hames, that can't be a midaraisa, since the dam began coming out mechaim. It must be a din d'Rabbanan called dam tevusa. Even in the case of a dam which began to flow out mechaim, the Chachamim gave it a din of dam and hames and is metame be'oil. Rav Yossi disagrees. He holds in this case dam tevusa will not apply. Why is that? Because we see that the dam began to come out mechaim, it was nekar mechaim, it was dislodged while she was still alive, and therefore we have no reason to suspect that any dam came out, continued to flow out la'achar misa, and there is no halacha of dam tvusa in this case. Dam tvusa is only when we're mesupik, when there's a suffix, when there's uncertainty of whether the dam came out partially mechaim and partially la'achar misa. Now, what exactly is the definition of dam tvusa? We have two shitas. Reb Lezer and Reb Yehuda holds it is a case of a suffix kulei mechaim kulei chamisa or mixas chaim mixas lachamisa. The Chacham say no, that is not a case of dam tfusa, but rather only in a case where we know for sure that some came out mechaim and some lachamisa. We're simply unsure of how much was mechaim and how much lachamisa. The Brisa mentioned another two cases of a harag on a bed and a harag on a tree, a machlekes in both halachas. Continues the Mishnah. Barishayna, at first, hayu aimrim, they used to say, hayesheves al dam tohir haysama'ara mayim lepesach. Now we know that a tvul yom, a tamei who was toivel and is awaiting nightfall, he's waiting for Her Shemesh to complete his tahara, is considered to be a sheni l'tuma, but only regarding specific things. Meaning, if he touches chulin, it's tar. If he touches meiser, it's tar. However, regarding truma v'kachim, a tvul yoyim is considered to be a sheni l'tuma. Now, an isha, a yoledes, after leda, come the yimei tuma, after which she is toivel, and she awaits the completion of a yimei tahara. In the case of an akeva, it would be 14 yimei tuma, she is toivel, and then waits another 66 days until the yimei tahara complete. At that point, she is allowed to start touching truma, kachim, and come to the Beis Hamikdash. She is called a tfulas yoim aruch. It is as if it is a very long day since the tefillah until the completion of Yimei Tahara. We treat it as a very long day. She has a din of a tvul yoim. Says the Mishnah. Barishayna, at first, hayu ayrin, they used to say, hayesheves al dam tohir. For the isha is in the middle of observing her Yimei Tahara. Haysam ma'ara mayim lepesach. She's allowed to pour water. She's allowed to hold on to a kli that contains water which was designated to be used to wash the karban pesach. Since she is only a sheni l'tuma, she cannot be matame the kli, but she has to be careful not to come into direct contact with the actual water. Why? Because this water was designated for a karban pesach. It was prepared in accordance with the standards of kachim, and therefore it would have a din of kachim. And being that she's a tvul yoim, and a tvul yoim can be matame kachim, she's considered to be a sheni regarding kachim, therefore she can't touch the actual water. Chazru loymar, they went ahead and they changed and they said, harehik magat memes, she's considered to be not only a sheni l'tuma, but even a step higher, she's a magat memes. she is as if somebody who touched a mace. A mace is considered to be the highest level of Aviyah V'Isatuma. Somebody who touches a mace is an Avatuma, and somebody who touches the Avatuma is a Rishon Latuma. She is a Rishon Latuma. Not only is she a Sheni, she's actually a step higher, a Rishon Latuma. Le Kachim, with regard to actual Kachim, and not with regard to Chulin, something which is a non-Kachim, even if it was prepared to be designated to be used for Kachim on a higher standard of Kachim. No, in that case, it would not become affected by a Tvul Yom. So in essence, they changed two things. Firstly, they said that she is more stringent. She's not just a Sheni. A Tvul As Yom Aruch, an Isha who is being Yeshevas Adam Toyer, is not merely a Sheni like an ordinary Tvul Yom. She's more stringent. She is a Rishon. On the second account, they were actually being Mekel. They proclaimed their leniency. No, she cannot be Matame only if it is strictly Truma v'Kachim, but not something which was designated, which was prepared for Kachim. And in our case, she can actually come into direct contact with the water itself, since the water is not Kachim. This is Kedivir Beis Hillel, who maintain that she is a Rishon Latuma. She's actually a step higher. She is an Avatuma. So in conclusion, what is the status of an Isha who is a Tvulas Yom Aruch, meaning between when she is Toivel, after the Metuma, until the completion of her Yemei Tahara? What is her status? According to the Berishayna, the initial learning, she was a Sheni. Chazru Laimar, they changed and considered her to be a Rishon. According to Beis Hillel, Shammai says she is a Av Hatuma. Zok the Gemara. Ma'ara in Nagas Loi. The Gemara is making a diuk. The Reisha said that she can pour by holding the kli. Incidentally, Tosfos says, what's the point? What's the chiddush of the Mishnah? Why doesn't the Mishnah just state straight out that she should be careful not to touch the water? Why does the Mishnah have to say it in a roundabout way? She can pour it via a kli. So Tosfos says that the Mishnah is teaching us a chiddush. Don't be concerned that she will actually touch the water. She may handle the kli, and we're not concerned that she will mistakenly come into direct contact with the mayim. So getting back to the Gemara, says the Gemara, Ma'ara in Nagas Loi. She can only pour by holding the utensil, but she can't actually come into contact with the water. Why is that? Because she's a Tvul Yom, and a Tvul Yom is Metame Kachim. But this is not Kachim. This is merely Chulin water, which was designated, which was prepared for Kachim. We see from here that even a Chulin which was prepared on a high standard, on a standard of Kachim, will carry the halacha of Kachim regarding becoming Tamei of it by a Tvul Yom. Alma, we see from here, Chulin shenas or Altaras HaKodesh, Chulin which was prepared Altaras HaKodesh with a Kodesh standard, Ki Kodesh Damu, has the same din as Kodesh with regard to a Tvul Yom and will become Tamei. So that's what it seems from the Reisha of the Mishnah. Now let's drop down to the Seifa. Ema Seifa, Chazru Laimar, Harihi Kid Magat Memes LeKachim. She's only considered to be Tamei regarding actual Kachim. LeKachim in, L'Chulin Loi, but not regarding Chulin. Alma, we see from here, Chulin Shanas or Altaras HaKodesh, Lav Kodesh Dami. We see from here, only actual Kachim will become affected by Tvul Yom, but not Chulin, which was Nas or Altaras HaKodesh. So the Mishnah seems to contradict each other. Says the Gemara, very simple. There are two separate shittas. The Reish of the Mishnah, which says that Chulin Shanas or Altaras HaKodesh does have the properties of Kodesh, does get Tamei by a Tvul Yom. That is following the Shittas Rabbanan, who hold that Chulin Shanas or Altaras HaKodesh Ki Kodesh Damu. The Seif, however, is following the Shita of Abba Shol, who holds Lav Ki Kodesh Damu. So the Gemara, Masnis and Mani, the Seif of the Mishnah, is following the Shita of Abba Shol, the Sanya Abba Shol Omer, Tvul Yom Tchila LeKodesh. Tvul Yom is considered actually to be a Rishon regarding Kachim, Latame Shnayim B'Liv Salechad. If he touches Kachim, the Kachim becomes a Sheni, and then if that Kachim touches another Kachim, that Kachim becomes Tamei, and if that Kachim touches another Kachim, it becomes Pasal. Meaning his Tamei carries on up until 3 more levels. But in any case, Abba Shol uses the word Tvul Yom Tchila LeKodesh. He's only considered to be Tamei regarding Kachim, actual Kachim, and not Chulin Shanasu Altaras HaKodesh. Continues the Mishnah. Umaydim, everybody agrees, Shehi Eicheles B'Maiser. Whether it's Beis Shammai, whether it's Beis Hillel, everybody agrees that this Isha who's a Tvul Yom may eat meiser, because regarding meiser, she is not considered to be tamei. V'koitza l'chala. If she needs to separate challah from her dough, she may do so. Umakefes v'koyer l'shem. She takes the piece of dough, which is currently not yet challah. It is simply a chulin dough. She separates it, puts it into a separate kli, umakefes, and then she brings it over to the rest of the dough. We'll see in the Gemara why. V'koyer l'shem, and then she calls it a name challah. She designates it and gives it the status of challah. And then she's careful not to come into contact with this piece of dough. So before she calls it challah, she may touch it, because it's merely chulin, as long as she takes care that afterwards she doesn't touch it. The Mishnah continues, if her tvul yaim, the roik, the spit of a tvul yaim would fall, dam tahara, and the dam tahara of the tvul yaim falls al kikosh truma, on a loaf or bed of truma, shutar, it does not become pasul or tamei. Continues the Mishnah. What happens to a tvulas yom aruch? After she completes her yimei tahara, after 80 days are over, the pasuk says she may come into contact with truma, she may come into Beis Hamikdash, etc. Is she required to be toivel again? Yes, tzricha tvila b'achroina. She needs to be toivel again, which is a big chiddush. Although an ordinary tvul yom, he's toivel, he waits for nightfall, and he's completely tar. He doesn't require another tvila. This is different. Since such a long time, many days have elapsed since her tvila and the completion of Yimei Tahara, Beishamai hold that perhaps she was Mesiach Das. She diverted her attention and didn't pay enough attention to maintain her Tahara. Perhaps she came into contact unknowingly with a davar tamei, since she wasn't allowed to touch truma and come into the Mikdash. Perhaps she wasn't so careful with coming into contact with Tumah. Therefore, Beishamai require an additional tefillah at the end of the Yimei Toyar to enable her to eat truma and come into the Beis Hamikdash. Beis Hillel Oimrim, that is not so. Eina tzricha tefillah b'achrona. She does not need another tefillah. So, in summary, the Mishnah said that a tvul yom may come into contact with chulin, with meiser, and the Mishnah explained how an isha who's a tvulas yom will separate her challah. The Mishnah added that any mashka, like roik, dam tahara, emanating from a tvul yom, does not have the power to be matamei. And the conclusion of the Mishnah, machlokes b'sham v'tzilul, whether this isha is required to be toivel once again at the completion of a yimei tahara. Continues the Gemara. How come a tvul yom could eat meiser? The Amar Mar, we've learned, tava va'ala, after tvila oichel meiser, he may eat meiser, although he's a tvul yom. Continues the Gemara, v'koitza l'chala, she will separate a piece of this dough in order to make from it challah. Why is that? Chulin, atvul n'chala. Chulin, something which is not kodesh and is tevel because it contains in it a potential challah, meaning the dough that you need to separate challah from it. At this point, prior to designating the challah, it has a din of a simple chulin, of an ordinary chulin, and therefore will not become tamei through a tvul yom. Chulin hatvulin l'chala lav k'chala damu, does not have the status of challah. It is merely considered to be ordinary chulin, and she may contact it. Uma kefes, after she places the dough in the kli, she brings it over to the rest of the dough in order to make it into challah. Why is that? The Amar Mar, we've learned mitzvah litroi mukaf. It is a mitzvah to be mafresh truma, to mafresh challah, within close proximity. We learn from a pasuk of mimenu. It is a mitzvah to take it from close by. V'kari l'Hashem, afterwards she designates it. Sal kadai techamina, what is the chiddush? I would think, nigzar, there is room to be concerned, and bigoizu dilma asir lemingaba, perhaps she will come into contact inadvertently with a challah, even though she's holding the cleat from the outside, me'avrai, I would think that perhaps she will by mistake put her finger in and touch the challah that's inside. Kamash Malan, the Mishnah teaches us that there is no room, that it is not a valid chashash. Continues the Gemara. V'imnafal miroika, if roik or dam tahara emanates from a tvul yom, it is not matame. This nan, we've learned to mashka tvul yom, mashka which comes out from a tvul yom, is not tummy. It is simply kamashkin hanoigea behen. It is as though he touched a mashka. Ve'elu eina matam. The Chazal did not impose a tuma on the mashka in these cases. Chutz mashka azav shav tuma. Actually, the Hagoyes Hagroa deletes this line. Continues the Gemara Beishamai Oimrim that she requires another tefillah. My benai. What is the basis? What is the grounds for this machlekes between Beishamai who require another tefillah after the completion of Yimei Tahara, and Beis Hillel who do not. Amar Rav Katina, Tvul Yom Aruch Ika Binayu. Since it is a long Tvul Yom, it is a very long day, so to speak, between her Tefillah and the completion of Yimei Tahara, we suspect, we are chayshish perhaps, that inadvertently she wasn't careful and she became tamei, and therefore we require an additional tefillah in order for her to enable her to enter the Beis Hamikdash or eat truma. So in summary, a Tvul Yom has a din of a sheni l'tumah only regarding truma and kachim, not regarding chulin and meiser. He's considered to be toy regarding chulin and meiser. However, a chulin which was nasu al taras hakodesh, there is a machlekes tanaim whether we consider it to be merely chulin and does not become tamei by coming into contact with a Tvul Yom, or it has the din of a kodesh and will become tamei through a Tvul Yom. What about an isha who is yesheves al dam tahara and she is a tfulas yom aruch? According to the initial Mishnah, Berishona, she is a sheni l'tumah. According to the Chazru Loimar, she is a rishon l'tumah. According to the Daya of Beis Hillel, Beis Shammai holds she's actually an av hatuma. Now, does she need a tvila at the end of a Yimei Tahara? Beis Shammai require, and Beis Hillel say the tvila that she did after Yimei Tuma is sufficient, and she is not required to undergo another tvila.